Hello fellas, Cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing The Invisible Man. This was written and directed by Leigh Wharnell and stars Elizabeth Moss. The film really focuses on Cecilia, a woman who's trapped in a controlling relationship with a wealthy and brilliant scientist. She escapes in the dead of the night and disappears into hiding. But when Celia's abusive ex commits suicide and leaves her a generous portion of his vast fortune, Celia suspects his death was a hoax. As a series of eerie coincidences turns lethal, threatening the lives of those she loves, Celia's sanity begins to unravel as she desperately tries to prove that she is being haunted by someone nobody can see. I really enjoyed this thoroughly. I think Leigh Wharnell is not only a really solid horror director, but he's ultimately becoming one of the known horror directors who's bringing a refreshing look to particular horror stories and films. And I think this is one of his best films. He's only directed 3 films, but he's written a number of them. But this is probably his best film so far. What I really like about this film is it really twists the Invisible Man story that we all know, the H.G Wells story that has been famously done and redone many of times. But what Leigh does with this is he modernises it and he puts a bit of a twist on it. Not only is it set today, but it focuses more on the female character, Celia, where the other films, that character has been around, but ultimately is the second fiddle to the ultimate Invisible Man. With this twisted, it really focuses on the female character. And to the extent that you're not quite sure what she sees as reality, you start to be affected as she's affected by what's going on. And then you start to see things happen and you start to realize that maybe she isn't as crazy as you thought she might be. And she starts to see really bizarre things happen. And I thought that was fantastic. The suspense is fantastic. It really sets it up in a beautiful way. I really like it was minimal locations, it was a simple story, it was simply done. There was visual effects in there, but they were used in a simple and small way that was very effective for the story they were telling. I think Elizabeth Moss is absolutely fantastic and does a really great job. She's an actress who's really starting to prove herself. She first appeared in stuff like West Wing and then went on to obviously Mad Men, which propelled her forward, but it's all the other stuff she's doing in between, like Handmaid's Tale and a variety of other things. And she's really fantastic in this and Leigh really puts her through her paces in this film and she gets to show a variety of different emotions. I like the arc of the character too. When we first meet her, she's sort of this timid, scared thing who's locked inside, who's scared to step outside once she escapes from her husband. And she's not really living, she's just living in fear ultimately, and doesn't really know what to do. When she finds out her husband has killed himself, it sort of frees her up a little bit. But the arc for her starts there and ends with her being a strong and confident woman, taking things into her own hands and finding the justice that she really, really wants. And I really loved that. I thought it was a great arc for the character, which you don't usually see in these sort of films. Each scene takes its time. Great operatic music that happens throughout the film that really builds tension and adds a lot to the scenes that we're seeing. All the side characters are kind of interesting, but it's really her story. Everything she sees and feels, we see and feel, and I really like that. I thought that was a really great way to take the story. And the focus being on her is so unique because it isn't really about this man who can go invisible, it's really about her and the trials and tribulations that she goes through and what she has to overcome and to become the hero. So in a way it has that slasher movie sort of thing where you've got a character who has to overcome something in order to defeat the evil, the creature, the masked killer, whatever in the end. And that sort of has that sort of feel for me. There are scenes in this that feel like they've taken from other films. There is one involving where she's taken to a mental institution, and this sort of feels very reminiscent of Candyman with Virginia Madsen in a very similar scene and very similar context. But I think that's what Leigh does. He takes from other films and adds to his in a unique and interesting way. And he's a very refreshing director in my opinion. He's really becoming his own voice. He worked a lot and extensively with James Wan, but now he's broken away from him. He makes films different to him, which I really loved. I'm glad he's not copying his friend and doing the same sort of films. And he just does some really interesting, unique things. And I think his writing's gotten better and better, and this is a great example of it. This film is filled with so many great sequences that you don't expect. The opening, where she's escaping from the house, is absolutely fantastic. I was on the edge of my seat, I was captivated. I was drawn into this because I didn't really know what was going on. And the way, the beats that it had in it and the things that unfolded, it was just fantastically done and I was blown away. It was a breathtaking sequence. There are a number of sequences throughout the film that do the same sort of thing. There's moments when you start to see these weird things happen, or when the Invisible Man starts to appear, so to speak, and it attacks her, and how they do that, and how they show that on screen, and the visual effects they use in a minimal way, but is very realistic for what they're going for. I really loved that. I really loved how they decided to make the Invisible Man go invisible. I thought that was unique and original, and it was very realistic. They made it a very more realistic film than they had done previous. The last scene is fantastic as well set up. It just feels really well written and paced, and the story unfolds in a unique and interesting way. Leigh is really able to capture something different here, where it is more about suspense than it is about horror and gore and violence. Yes, this film does have violence in it, but it's used in a minimalistic way, and it doesn't take away from the story it's telling. And it isn't violent for violence sake, it's as part of the story. And just everything with the Invisible Man was really well done as well. You really feel for Elisabeth Moss's character, you really feel connected to her, you want to get behind her, you want to see her be safe and seek safety. And I just was blown away by this film. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was, and it was just a fantastic viewing experience. I was hooked from the beginning, and it didn't let me go until the very end of the film, and I really loved that. I haven't been that captivated by a horror film in quite some time, and I thought it was brilliant in that regard. There's a couple of things I didn't quite love about it that could have been done a little better, I guess. The main thing was there was some jump scares in it. They used the music for you to feel fear, and I don't like that. I don't like when they use music to force you to feel something rather than just allowing you to feel it. And there's so sharp cuts and sharp scenes in this that are jump scares used in a way I can see why they're used, but it just takes away from the film in many ways. I don't think you need to do this anymore. We've seen time and time again where horror directors such as Ari Aster and Jordan Peele are able to do something without jump scares, are able to create suspense and fear and a creepiness and eeriness to scenes without having these jump scares. And I think that's one thing that slightly lets this film down just a little bit. All the stuff in the mental institution is fantastically done as well. You're not quite sure if she's crazy or not. And even when you're watching it, because it's all done from her point of view, you don't really know if she's imagining things or not. But as it goes on, you start to see the reality of the circumstances, and that she is not as crazy as she seems, or as crazy as she's been made out to be. There are a couple of shocking moments in this film that I didn't expect things to go the way they did. I just think that Leigh Wharnell's able to keep audiences guessing and people guessing and not knowing what's going to happen next. The film has this unsettling feeling. Not as thick and as strong as a movie like Hereditary, but it does have that eeriness feel throughout it because you don't know what's going to happen. And when he does appear, you don't know what he's going to do. And I really thought that was really great. And a great refreshing take on a old classic story. And also the fact that this is a great beginning of the dark universe that Jason Blum's sort of taken over. I like to see what they do next, but I hope they keep them simple and realistic like they did with this film. Final thoughts. At the heart of this, it's really about domestic violence. It's really about violence that happens towards women. And it really is important film in many ways. And it really is important not only in what it's talking about about abusive relationships, but also it's important within the Me Too movement as well, of what transpires between a man and a woman sometimes behind closed doors. And this sort of really gets to the nitty-gritty of it. It looks at the idea that even after someone has left their partner, that doesn't mean that person won't come after them. That doesn't mean they're safe. That doesn't mean they can just start a new life and everything's fine, because that's not always the case. And that's sort of what this film looks at in that regard. And I think that's very relevant. Hats off to Leigh Wharnell for crafting a story like this. I'm going to give The Invisible Man 4.5 out of 5. I thought this film was great. If you're a horror fan, definitely worth your time. If you like the Invisible Man storyline, you'll get a lot out of this. I just thought it was fantastically done and very impressive, and it's the first film on my 2020 best films of the year so far. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.